This is the Karazakh Medical Forensic Center in southern Tehran. We understand that this footage was filmed on Saturday. Huge anti-regime street protests had taken place the evening before. The person filming on their phone is pretending to be on a call. We are disguising his voice. These are the necessary logistics in the aftermath of a massacre. That is what you're seeing. The morgue sections inside are all full. So, the warehouse is used also. That is also now full, so corpses are laid out on the ground outside as people arrive to identify loved ones. Families bring ID, identify the bodies themselves. Then once that happens, the medics are called. They verify the documents and conduct a quick autopsy. Each family is given a code, then the death is registered. In this one site, the person filming says he estimates there were some 2,000 bodies here. This is the minutiae of a massacre. The big picture is that what happened in Iran over the weekend could turn out to be one of the worst mass killings of protesters in recent times. A police station in the neighborhood of Tehran Pars, Tehran. We're confident that this was filmed during the protests which were taking place there over the weekend. The video lasts for over 6 minutes. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see people shooting from the roof. The sound of gunfire is constant. Human rights groups are trying to be precise about the killings they've recorded in Iran over the last 48 hours. Mahmoud Amiri Mukhadam is a doctor, has been monitoring human rights abuses in Iran as scientifically as he can for almost 20 years. Acknowledges that his organization's figure from yesterday of 648 killed is an underestimate, to put it mildly.
When we say 648, as we said yesterday, just keep in mind that most of that is from 1 or 2 days. They are from 14 of the 31 provinces in Iran. They are from 7 out of 100 hospitals in Tehran. And then when you start thinking that what does it mean? And these are only, for example, some of the, in the hospitals, only the bodies that families took to the hospital. Then you come up with a picture that it sounds like a massacre that have been taking place.
The funerals of protesters next door to the forensic center in Tehran. Donald Trump said today that, quote, help is on its way, and encouraged Iranians to keep protesting. But thousands have been arrested, some like Irfan Sultani facing execution. His family told us that was due to take place tomorrow. Whatever form help comes in, they're wondering whether it will come in time for him.
Well, just before we came on air, I spoke to Professor Mohammad Morandi in Tehran. He's a former advisor to Iran's nuclear negotiating team and is close to the authorities there. I began by asking for his response to the deadly crackdown on protesters who say his government simply no longer has the right to govern.
Yesterday, we saw rallies across the country, and the footage is online. and it was broadcast live, even though now people like Musk and others are trying to pretend it was AI or
No, these were people
old
who were
footage.
forced to go out and protest, but people of their own free will bravely went out, and in return, the government, your government, has slaughtered them in their thousands. And for what?
There were 2.3 million people in Tehran yesterday on the streets, and reporters from Al Jazeera English, Arabic, RT, CGTN, CCTV, and others, Al Mayadeen, were there, and they witnessed it. How
Yeah.
can you force
These are
millions of people on the streets in
because
Tehran
you instill
and other
fear
streets?
into the people of your country. Your government instills fear into the people of your country.
I think that you are living in an alternative universe and you're drowning in your own fake narratives. If you think that the people of Iran support the MEK terror organization or the monarchists that your governments fund and support, I think you really know literally nothing about Iran.
Your government says that
Iran,
2,000 people are dead. Are you denying that?
our government never made any statements about any death numbers at all. You're talking
been
about
reported
Reuters.
to Reuters.
Our government does not report to Reuters, and Reuters constantly fabricates information about Iran, and it constantly says unnamed sources.
So the bodies piling up on the streets, that's all AI, that's all fake, is it?
There are no bodies piling up on the streets.
No bodies piling up on the streets. We've seen them with our own eyes.
No, not on the streets. I live in Tehran.
Well, in the morgues,
and by the way, so then rephrase and don't produce propaganda. You're supposed to be a credible news outlet. 100 police officers, roughly, or officers of the law were murdered. 2 were burnt alive. 1 was beheaded by these rioters or the people who you call protesters. These are violent people.
Let me ask you, 26-year-old Irfan Soltani, 17-year-old Amir Ali Haidari, 28-year-old Naveed Salehi, these people have all been killed for the simple fact that they are demanding freedom and they're using their voices to demand freedom. That's the truth, isn't it?
I don't know the names that you give, and I don't know what happened to these people. I don't know if they exist or not. Just giving names doesn't mean anything.
Well,
but
they're 3 among thousands, and the executions begin tomorrow. And for what? For people wanting to use their voices to demand freedoms that you take for granted.
No, the people who will be executed, if they are convicted, are the people who burned people alive and who beheaded others. These are people who were rioting, and these were people who were shooting at police officers, and there's footage of it. And that footage is online, and it's on the accounts of many people, and people can see it. Mainstream media in the West, and obviously your media, since you are trying to create an environment for war and to justify illegal activity on behalf of your regime and the Trump regime, you're, of course, creating a narrative of thousands of peaceful protesters on the streets being slaughtered.
If you don't like my questions, Professor Marandi, let me put to you what the German Chancellor said. Friedrich Merz said, when a regime can only maintain power through violence, then it is effectively at its end. Do you accept your government is nearing its end? It's in the final days.
First of all, who said that I'm afraid of your questions or I don't like your questions? Second of all, who makes the German Chancellor any more credible than you?
The German Chancellor has been elected by his people, and you accused me of propaganda when many would accuse your government of propaganda day in, day out. So I just ask you again, is your government entering its final days?
No, and have no doubt that any strike on Iran, which is illegal, and obviously you're trying to promote it and to justify it, is illegal. And the Iranian people who've come to the streets yesterday to protest against the Western and Israeli-backed riot, we all know that Pompeo, who was the former head of the CIA, said that Mossad is on the ground with the rioters. They were guided and organized from abroad, and when the internet went out, suddenly they went blind. And that's
the
why
protesters have been given
peaceful.
succor from abroad because they think they have help coming. So I want to ask you, if the US attacks Iran, does Iran hit US targets in the Middle East?
If the United States attacks Iran, without a doubt, Iran will strike back very hard. And remember what happened during the 12-day war. Go look at the footage from Tel Aviv and other Israeli cities. And as Steve Bannon himself said the day after the war, the real story of the 12-day war was that the Israeli regime during the last 2-3 days was hit so hard that they were seeking a ceasefire, not Iran.
Well, I mean, that's propaganda in your book, as you describe it. Just finally,
go and look at Steve Bannon's interview. It was broadcast online. It's not mine.
Okay,
Steve Bannon just finally, Ayatollah Khamenei,
he's an old man. It's been widely reported that he may be looking to go into exile. Would you see that as a defeat?
Well, you're just making stuff up. He's not going anywhere, and your government and the U.S. government, if they get involved in a war with Iran, global economy will go downhill and collapse. And your people will come after you and say, why did you do this to us?
Professor Mohammed Marandi, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
So what might the American president do now? Our US editor, Anushka Astana, is in Washington for us. Anushka.
So, as so often with Donald Trump, he has taken to Truth social media to talk about all of this. He wrote a post in which he said he was addressing Iranian patriots. He told them to keep protesting, to take institutions, and in capped letters, as Porrick mentioned earlier, he said help is on its way. Now, he is in Detroit, the president, at the moment, and as you might expect, a journalist asked him, what help? Listen to how he responded.
Just went through the roof.
You said to Iran this morning that help is on the way for protesters. What did you mean by that? What kind of help?
You're going to have to figure that one out. I'm sorry.
How many people have been killed in Iran?
Nobody's been able to give me an accurate number. I have heard numbers from everything's a lot. One is a lot. But I've heard numbers much lower and I've heard numbers much higher. We'll be knowing. We're probably going to find out over the next 24 hours. I think it's a lot.
So, look, no guidance there from President Trump. But what we do know is that he has spoken to his advisers. His national security team met this morning. Axios is reporting that his envoy, Steve Witkoff, has secretly met with the former Crown Prince of Iran, who is in exile. We know that they're considering sanctions against individuals. He's talked about a 25% tariff on those doing business with Iran, but there's also military options on the table. They tend not to want to go for broader military action at the moment, but we know he hasn't shied away from striking countries, Syria, Iraq. We saw what happened in Venezuela, Nigeria, and actually, as we've been on air, he's been talking about how flawless his previous strikes on Iran have been. Of course, the risk with a surgical strike, as we have seen, is that it doesn't actually lead to regime change. And there's also the issue that Congress behind us are unhappy that they are not asking for permission. I went down earlier and I asked some Democrats, is Iran different for you?
And what do you say to the Iranian people who want America to intervene?
The people of Iran are bravely standing up and speaking out against this brutal regime, but the president does not have the authority to go in, and this is part of this pattern.
There are many ways for us to support the Iranian people short of military action, because it's not in America's best interest to start a war with Iran. In fact, it's not even in the Iranian people's best interest.
Now, I should say there is precedent for strikes without congressional approval. Barack Obama did the same when he was president here. But there are a lot of concerns about where all of this leads, whether a single strike, for example, on Iran would actually result in regime change or actually lead to more concerns down the road. And also a question about what is Donald Trump's motivation. Before Venezuela, he was talking about human rights. Afterwards, he hasn't mentioned the word democracy, only largely the word oil. And we know that America has strategic interests in Iran, not just around security, but also it is another energy-rich country. So the concern is, if there is a strike, as they are considering, what does the follow-up look like?
Anushka, thanks very much for joining us. Well, a short while ago, I spoke to Barbara Leaf, who served as Assistant Secretary of State for Near Eastern Affairs under Joe Biden and was Ambassador to the United Arab Emirates before that.
So I would guess that the president has in mind, yes, some element of military action, presumably strikes on IRGC and other elements of the security forces, headquarters, arms caches, etc. But I think he's also got in mind to use psyops of various types and
so you mean psychological
cyber
warfare? Just spell out what you mean by
exactly.
that.
The problem, as we already see, and this was evident even before there was such a dramatic shut off and shut down of the internet, but there is a huge amount of disinformation in the air. So it's quite hard to discern what is real and what is not. But I think he plans to stir the pot.
How risky is this? What's at stake here, and what is he trying to achieve?
In this region, you can stir the pot. The pot may boil over, but you don't know where all of that goes. And you may not get the government you want, which is not to say we should not be giving support to the protesters. He has shut off for the moment the diplomatic channel, made that very dramatically evident today, publicly evident. I presume they may use a diplomatic channel eventually.
So how might Iran respond, do you think, if Donald Trump does take military action?
I think any punch that the Iranians try is going to be well overmatched immediately and be devastating. And they have no air defenses at this point. Those have been shredded. So they are very vulnerable. They also can't do external and internal at the same time. Their focus at this point is existential. It is suppressing, containing these crowds.
So isn't Donald Trump right then to seize this moment of weakness in the regime?
We don't have a success record of any kind of regime change from outside by the US in the region. You can go country by country and say what we were trying to achieve was limited, perhaps in 2011 in Libya, tried to prevent a terrible massacre that Gaddafi's forces were aiming to perpetrate. But in the end, it led to a decapitation of the regime, which led to chaos, which led to a huge vacuum into which all sorts of extremist forces.
You know, Trump attacked at least 7 countries last year, Venezuela and Syria this year, and this from the man who promised to end wars. What's going on?
Venezuela is a story that is still evolving. We still don't know the end point of that exercise. It was a law enforcement exercise. It was anti-narcotics, or it's not. And he has opened up the prospect of quite an open-ended engagement. But I don't think
that's what he's trying here.
I don't think that's possible in Iran. Right. For one thing, it's 3 times the size of Venezuela, and quite, as I say, quite a different country.
Barbara Leaf, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, now oil prices have spiked upwards in response to President Trump's threat to intervene in the Iranian uprising. Iran is a member of OPEC and a major crude oil producer. Our economics correspondent Helia Ebrahimi is here. Helia.
Well, Kathy, oil has been the underpinning narrative of much of this new imperial America we've seen in 2026. But the market reaction has been fairly muted. Well, until today, because take a look at this chart. You can see it's going to emerge now. The price of oil shoots up 3% the moment Donald Trump's social media post lands saying that help was on the way. Now, ironically, this is an even bigger price move than we saw after the extraction of Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela. But like Venezuela, analysts think 90% of Iranian oil goes to China at a heavy discount through this dark fleet of tankers, another thing that America is clamping down on. It's not just oil. Natural gas analysts are worried about. Iran is the world's third largest producer of natural gas, and the price there has been going up too.
And Donald Trump is locked in a separate conflict with the head of the US Federal Reserve, isn't he, Jerome Powell? And Mr. Powell's got some heavyweight backing.
Well, Kathy, it's like the Avengers Assemble of central banking, because you saw this extraordinary investigation being launched on the weekend against the Fed and Powell, which yesterday he publicly rebuked, saying that Trump was using this as a pretext to bully the Fed into cutting interest rates faster. Well, today, 11 of the world's most powerful central bankers all clubbed together to show solidarity with Powell, including the UK's Andrew Bailey and the European Central Bank's Christine Lagarde. In their letter, they say it is the independence of central bank that is the cornerstone of price, financial and economic stability. Plus, it's in the interests of citizens around the world. Now, the irony of all of this is that Trump's two visions of the world economy may be in his world, but they might contradict, because if the price of oil goes up because of a sustained conflict in Iran, pushes inflation up, which makes it harder, Kathy, for the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates.
Indeed. Helia, thanks very much.